Welcome to Daily Armor. Today I'm going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 looking at verse number 9. Then we're going to be going on a little journey. Our bad example is given in Numbers chapter 21. And then we're going to be going over to Job chapter 1, chapter 2. I won't be reading all this. I'll just be going to a few things. Really the whole book of Job is our good example. And then we're going to end with James chapter 5 verse number 11 and 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse number 3. So a lot of good scripture. If you want to stop the video, rewind it, and write all those scripture down, you can study this stuff out for yourself. Maybe I know that the Lord will show you and pull out something, special just for you, like He has done just for me. Even like in the midst of studying for this, I found a question that I have, and I've got it written over in the side for me to study and look at that later. I even want to talk to my husband about that, who is my pastor, and see, if he can give me an explanation, a little bit better understanding. It was just like something a little exciting. So I know when you study this stuff out for yourself, when you read it, when you are a child of God and you read His Word, it is amazing how the words just pop off the page and you just know God is speaking to you personally, and what a treasure that His Word is, and that He is speaking to us through His Word. But let's get into today's devotion, and it's 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse number 9. Bear with me a little bit today. I don't have my contacts in. I don't have my glasses on because it causes a terrible glare. But I'm getting ready to mow, so I don't put my contacts on until after I mow. But verse number 9, so let me pop them on real quick here. Verse number 9 says, "Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed of serpents." So we're talking about neither let us tempt Christ. Don't let us test Him. We don't want to test His anger. We don't want to test His patience. We don't want to test His love. We don't want to test Him about any of these things. And if you are a parent, our children have given us so many examples of what this feels like and what this seems like. If you've got that child that wants to push your buttons, that wants to constantly complain like you're not going to take care of them, wants to constantly worry and fear, and you're just like, would you calm down? You're fine. And they want to panic about things, or they want to push your buttons and defy you. Our children, our grandchildren can give us so many wonderful examples of what that feels like. Just thinking about what that feels like when we're in that moment. Think about what we do if we act like that, or when we act like that to the Lord. When we are like, Lord, what am I going to do now? You said you would never leave me nor forsake me, but I don't know where you are. When we say things like that, we're tempting the Lord. We're tempting Christ. When we're treating the Lord as if He doesn't love us, if He has forsaken us, when He said He will never leave us and never forsake us. He will be with us even to the end. And there is no end with Him. And when we say those things as if He could tell a lie and He can't, as if we can't trust Him when we do, when we can and we should, always in every circumstance, then He's greatly offended by that. And we don't want to make Him feel that way. Remember when you felt that way. When maybe that, if it's not with your children, maybe it's been with a spouse. Maybe it's been with a family member, another family member. Maybe, we've all been in those circumstances when we're like, why are you jumping down my throat? Why are you getting so upset? It's fine. I've got it took care of. It's going to be fine. And God, who can take care of everything, when we're lashing out because of fear, or because of frustration, or because of pain, or because of great tragedy, that's not the reaction He wants. He wants us to come to Him with those things, of course, but respectfully, and still desiring for Him to do what only He can do, and looking to Him to take care of it or to handle it, no matter what it is, whether we have broken hearts or broken homes or whatever the tragedy could be. God can handle it, but we need to come respectfully, and we need to still always worship Him, no matter what the enemy might be throwing at us. Let's look at our bad example, and then God gives us a wonderful, through the whole book of Job, is a wonderful, good example of somebody that had to endure a lot of grief, pain, and suffering, and yet he didn't sin against the Lord. So let's look at our bad example, and we'll find our bad example in Numbers chapter 21. The book of Numbers. I've got so many pages marked in my Bible here. Let me get to the right one. The book of Numbers chapter 21. And I'm not going to go through this whole scenario because I've just got so much that I want to cover today. But let's look at verse 4 and verse 5. And it says, "And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom, and the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way." Okay, so this way was they were on a difficult journey. So now we kind of know what's happening, what's going on. The terrain was difficult, the weather was difficult, the food was maybe, sparse and not always feeling like they had enough strength. But God was helping them all along the way. Yes, the journey can get so hard and difficult. But even in the midst of all that, God knows how to refresh us. And we're never to take our eyes off the Lord. But the people were getting discouraged. We've all been there. We've all been there where we've been like, "But Lord, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I don't think I can go another day like this. I don't think I can handle this anymore." We've all been there. And that's what the people here, they're discouraged because of the way. We've all experienced that. The way can get so hard and difficult. Let's look and see what they did. And this is not what the Lord wants us to do. This is the bad example. "And the people spake against God and against Moses." So they're speaking against the Lord and they're speaking against Moses. It is so easy to blame God for all the bad stuff. It's so easy to blame God instead of looking to Him to help through the bad stuff. Instead of looking for those opportunities for Him to show us Him and just waiting on Him to provide. But it's so easy. Sometimes the first response is to speak against the Lord, and we've got to fight that off. And then the second thing that I have seen in my life, especially because I am a pastor's wife, I have seen people blame my husband for a boo-koodles of things that really has nothing to do with him, but everything to do with them. It's their issues they're going through, but they're going to blame him. Because he's not doing this or he's not doing that, or they you've got to motivate me. And he's like, "I don't have to motivate you. I'm not a motivational speaker. It's not my responsibility." He's like, "You come to the Lord's the one that can take care of you." He's like, I can't take care of you. And I have seen over the last, my husband's been pastoring now, over 25 years. He's been pastoring. This last January 1st was his 25th year of being a pastor. And I have seen him be blamed time and time and time again. And people get frustrated and mad about this or that, something going on in their personal life, and they bring it to church. And they want to blame the man of God because they're not getting the answers they want. They're not getting the motivation that they want. But maybe what God's given them is what God's going to give them what they need. But we often can refuse what God's saying you need. Well, Lord, I don't want to do that. Well, Lord, I don't think that don't apply to me. That's for somebody else. That don't apply to me. But we have to be careful. We need to assume, even in, just like the devotion yesterday, I'm like, "Well, Lord, this doesn't really apply to me." And He's like, "You still need to study it. You still need to, be, aware that these are things that are out there." and even, be careful of your conduct, of your words, of what you let yourself be exposed to. Of all these things that can have an effect, and that can take you down those roads that you think that you couldn't go down. I don't want to go down those roads, but I have to be aware that we're all capable of anything, and there's traps that are out there for all of us. And there's a trap of testing the Lord and testing his patience and insulting him. I mean, insulting him in a big way. And that's what the people are doing here. And the people spake against God. They spake against him. And the Lord's response was, and the Lord sent fiery serpents in verse number 6 among the people. And then verse number 7, therefore the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against thee, but we have spoken against the Lord. So what's the bad example? Anytime that we would be feeling tempted to speak against the Lord, no matter how hard the journey is getting, we need to speak to the Lord, and we need to ask the Lord to help, and we need to look to the Lord in a respectful way. But we don't ever need to speak against the Lord. And I know it gets hard, it gets difficult, and we don't understand why. I can go back and think of some times in my life that just the news I just went to my knees crying and so much agony and pain and turmoil, and yet the Lord was with me, and I have to cry unto him, and Lord, I don't understand, and I don't get it, and this is hard, and this hurts so bad. Yes, it hurts so bad, but we should speak to the Lord kindly and respectfully and worshipfully and thankfully, but we should never speak against the Lord. This is our bad example, speaking against the Lord. Now, what's our good example? Let's turn to the book of Job. The book of Job is a book that is very precious to me, at a time when I was very disappointed, and I will say that I was disappointed in the Lord because of some things that I had been praying, and it seemed like it was over, and that he had not answered those prayers, and that he had, there was disappointment on my end, and I was very upset. It was just for like a half a day. Believe you me, the Lord didn't let me get by with it for very many hours. And I was upset. I was angry. I was like, Lord, you led me to pray about this, and now it's, this has happened, and it's over, and it's going to end like this. And it wasn't very many hours. It probably wasn't even it was probably within an hour. And he was like, who said it was over? Just because it looks like it's getting worse doesn't mean it's over. And you know what? I'm still praying about that situation. And no, it's still not over. But man, does the Lord give me encouragement all along the way to help me endure and to pray for this situation, and for the one that's having to go through this situation, and to pray for the Lord to continue to give them that help. Because if he's encouraging me to keep praying, then he's encouraging those situations that I'm praying about, and that particular person that I'm praying for, no matter if it looks like the struggles are getting worse, he is encouraging them to keep going, that I've not left you, I've not forsaken you, I love you. Don't believe a word the enemy says. Don't believe one single word the enemy says, because it's full of lies and deceit. And he's trying to draw us away from worshiping the Lord. And so this devotion is going to lead us to, no matter what hurt, no matter what we're having to endure, no matter how hard the journey is today, this example in Job should lead us to worship the Lord. That was the example that Job set for us. And I don't know a person, well, I know one person that is the closest, and he's not endured all of this, but he has come pretty close to experiencing every bit of this. The closest I've ever met anybody of being a Job in my life is a friend that I'm praying for. But Job, and we're going to speak some about what all Job has went through, and yet he didn't sin against the Lord. Now, did he wish he was dead? Yes. Did he did he cry out to the Lord and saying, Lord, I wished I'd never been born. This is so hard. This is so difficult. He was just in agony. Yet he did not speak against the Lord. He didn't speak against the Lord. He spoke against himself. And he was going through and he spoke against the situations, against the circumstances that he was experiencing, but he didn't speak against the Lord. And that's our good example, that it can be done. It can be done. Lots of bad examples of lots of times where the people were speaking against the Lord, but Job gives us a good example, a wonderful example of that it can be done, that we can go through such horrible difficulties, but yet not speak against the Lord, which is what the enemy wants us to do. He spoke against the Lord, and he wants us to do the same thing. And we got to fight that off. And we do that by worshiping the Lord, by being thankful and grateful, because no matter what, we've got something to be thankful for. His salvation that he has given to us, that this is the closest to hell we'll ever experience, and we'll be in heaven one day. We've always got something to be thankful for. Be thankful for the Lord. Be thankful for him. Let's look at Job just quickly. I know there's a lot to cover in the whole book. If you've never read the whole book, I do challenge you to read the whole book of Job, but read it very slowly and very carefully, paying very close attention to who is speaking. When you are thinking about what the enemy is saying, when you think about what the Lord is saying, when you look at then what his friends come supposedly to come to help, but they didn't end up helping anything but making Job feel worse and worse and worse. Look at when Elihu is speaking, when, all of these other friends, when it's their turn, they're making the situation worse and worse and worse, because from their perspective, they think something that Job has done something to deserve all this, when he hasn't. He hadn't done one thing. What he had done was he had lived for the Lord. And the Lord said, have you considered my servant Job? Have you considered him? Oh, he is one of the good ones. Have you considered him? As if to tell the enemy, I wished you was good like Job. And the enemy was furious and said, well, he's only good to you, Lord. He's only speaking good of you, Lord, because you've been so good to him. If you took all of that away, Lord, if you took all that he had away, Lord, he'd speak against you. Lord, if you took his health, if you took everything away from him, he would speak against you, Lord. And the Lord's like, well, let's consider that. Let's just see what happens. He says, you can do with him what you want. Save his life. He says, you can't take his life. And in a nutshell, that's what the whole chapter of Job is about. God is showing us the best human example. Now, Job wasn't perfect. He's not a perfect man. But he's showing us a imperfect person that is capable of enduring and going through great tragedy, turmoil, agony, heartbreak, physically in so much severe pain, from the head to the soles of his feet, from his head to the soles of his, not one part of his body was he without pain. He was in severe agony, yet he was capable of not speaking against the Lord, but turning to the Lord and worshiping him and being thankful and grateful and understanding that he doesn't have to understand and know it doesn't make any sense, and he wasn't ever even given an explanation. We know what's happened. The Lord's letting us see the whole story. But Job didn't know about all this other stuff. He didn't know. But God took care of him. God took care of him. So if we look at chapter number 1, let me look at my notes real quick here. If we look at chapter number 1, we see that God is saying, have you considered my servant Job? And then Satan's, he's mad, he's angry. He's like, well, it's because of you've been so good to him. It's because of all he's got. And he says, well, then go take all. And so this is how it started. In Job chapter number 1, let me flip there. In Job chapter number 1, this is where the afflictions start. And it starts with what he has. What's important to, if you think about people in general, and especially men. As for us women, we notice it more in men than we notice it in ourselves. But it's important to us as well. But I notice it in my husband. It's obvious in my husband that his work is very important to him. Doing a good job, producing a good product, whatever the case may be. He wants to do a good sermon. He studies. He prepares. He's pacing. He's very thorough, and he does that in everything. If he's working on, a project around the house, if he's working at his job, doing electrical panels or whatever, he wants to do it. He wants to be efficient. He wants to be, have a good product, and God has blessed him in that way. And that we see that in the life of Job here. The works of his hands have been blessed. He's increased in his land, so he's got lots of property. And for men, one of those signs is well, how many acres do you have? Yeah. Well, how much land do you have? Well, how big is your house? It can be kind of that. Saying that you're doing well if you have things. And we know we don't have to have things to have that high. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. To have that high achievement or whatever you might say. But Job did have a lot of land. He did have a lot of property. He did have a lot of an abundance in his work. And he had a lot of children. So these are things that he had. And the Lord says, a man that's got a quiver full, he's a blessed man. So a lot of times when you're looking at a family and you're like, oh my goodness, you have 10 children. Wow. That's something to be proud of. My husband, he has 3 boys and a beautiful daughter, and he is so proud and so happy and so glad that he is amazingly proud that he has 3 sons. And so if we think about Job, he had 10 children. He was, immensely proud that he had so many children. What a blessing from the Lord that he had experienced. And so we look at all of this was taken. It was just back to back, one after another, and all of it's been taken. Look at verse number, we'll see where it's first taken. It says, verse number 12, we see that this was allowed, except couldn't put his hands on Job just yet. But let's look at verse number 14, and it says, verse number 14 says, and there came a messenger unto Job, and said, the oxen were plowing, and the asses feeding beside them, and the Sabeans fell upon them and took them away. So we see he had oxen and he had asses, and the enemy came and took them away. Now, he says, verse number 16, now the fire of God is fallen from heaven and hath burned up the sheep. So he had servants, and he had sheep, and he had servants, and consumed them. And I am escaped alone to tell thee. And so here he's getting word. He got another messenger come. So they've been attacked. The servants have been slain. The oxen and the asses have been taken. The servants and the sheep have been burned up. And then another in verse 17, it says, and the Chaldeans made out 3 bands and fell upon the camels and have carried them away and have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So he's got these 3 servants coming that have escaped death, and everything else has been taken or destroyed. And Job is hearing this, but it's not over. And while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and behold, there came a great wind. Makes me think of a tornado. There came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. It just makes me think of a tornado or a like a hurricane swept through and knocked the house down. Just whatever it was, there was this great wind, and his children are gone. And so all of this that's most important to a man especially, but really to mankind, is their work and their their home, their property, their children, and all of this was taken just one right after another, one after another. But look how he responds. Look how he responds. Oh my goodness. Then in verse number 20, then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshiped. Now he's doing these outward things. This just makes me cry, thinking all of this that he's went through, and I can't imagine. And I've went through hardship, but I've never went through hardship like this. Then Job arose and rent his mantle. He is showing that outside. He's like, this is his mantle, his cloak. He just rips it. He's like, oh, it means nothing. I'm just ripping. Because he feels ripped on the inside, he's ripping this on the outside. He's shaving his head, which would have been just, the pride of the hair and, everything. It would have been a symbol of humility for him to do that. He humbled himself before the Lord. And then he fell down upon the ground and worshiped. Oh, that we could do that. When we hear bad news, fall to the ground and worship the Lord. Verse 21 says, and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. It's easy to say the Lord is good when everything's going good. It is easy to say it then. And we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't. We should say it. We should exclaim it at all times. But how much more precious is it for to hear the Lord, for us to say, blessed be the name of the Lord, in the midst of bad news, of tragedy, of that phone call that you did not want to receive, of that experience that somebody came to bring you a message of destruction, of tragedy, of whatever the case may be. And the journey is hard and difficult. And when it gets the hardest and the most difficult is when we need to bow our heads, fall down to the ground, and worship the Lord and say, blessed be the name of the Lord. And that's when it's the hardest, is when it's the most important to do it. When it's the hardest, when you don't feel like going to church to worship the Lord, when you don't feel like, stopping and praying, when you don't feel like doing this or that, that is the best time to do it, because that is a slap in the face to the enemy. I can't hurt the enemy physically. The enemy is too great for me. But what I can do is worship the Lord and follow those good examples that the Lord has given me. And we see his suffering did not stop all the way through. I think it didn't stop till we see the end of it in chapter 37. Then in chapter 38 and 39, chapter 38 and 39, chapter 38 being that chapter that God used. And I didn't even get past 4 verses before the Lord reprimanded me when I was a couple of years ago, was upset with the Lord about some things that I had been praying about. And then I got the news, and it wasn't good. And it seemed like it was over, and it's still not over. I'm still looking forward to seeing how all this plays out on this that I'm praying about. But the Lord reprimanded me in those hours that I was upset. With Job chapter 38, he's like, who are you? Were you there when I created everything? Do I have to seek counsel of you? Do I have to ask you? No, the Lord, oh my goodness, the Lord, he dealt with me, and I fell down and I worshiped him, and I asked for forgiveness for that bad attitude, even though it was probably only for a few hours. It was just some crushing news. But was it the end of the world? No, because God is still faithful, and he's continuing to be faithful, and I've yet to see the end of it. And I'm excited because I have a great expectation, and what I have expectation for and about is that God's going to restore, just like he did for Job. The story may get hard and difficult, but it ends with that God restored Job. He restored all that had been taken. He restored all. We see that God is speaking in Job chapter 38 and 39. That's why I say, if you read the book of Job, really, really pay attention to who's speaking. Pay vital, close, slow attention, and pay really close attention to God describing, him making things and he making things a certain way, and the strength of the horse. I love that. I love that, love that, love that. And how he showed me that through the strength of my horse before he died. And he welled up this bit of energy, and I heard it thundering. And it was described that way in the scriptures. God described it that way. And then he let me see it and hear it and experience it. Oh my goodness, that was so exciting. He took something that was news that was difficult, and then he turned around and gave me encouragement to keep going, to keep praying, and just leave all the results up to him. And then we see in Job chapter 40, Job is submitting to the Lord. And then we see in Job chapter 42, and I want to turn there. I want to turn to Job chapter 42, and I want to read, I believe it's verse number 12. Let me make sure. It's verse number 10, I think now. Chapter 42, verse number 10. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job. Everything changed when Job prayed for his friends. His friends that first came there to try to encourage him, what they were wanting to do was they were wanting to encourage him to reveal what he had done to deserve all that. You've done something. It must be your fault. And that is a lie from the devil. That is a lie from the enemy. He is a liar. When we go through horrible things, this world has great tribulation. There is great trials and tribulation and trouble out there. And it doesn't mean that we've done something wrong. It may mean that we're just being challenged to see what we're made of and to see how we will treat the Lord through it. And I pray that I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. And I just hope and pray that when those times come in my life, that I can fall to my knees and I can worship the Lord in every circumstance. But all of this tragedy that happened to Job, when he prayed for those that had offended him, when he prayed for those that were making it worse, he prayed for his friends that were supposed to be his friends, that weren't acting very friendly, those that had turned their back on him, those that had let him down. When he prayed for them, then the Lord turned the captivity all around. And it says that the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. The Lord restored him. And he gave all back. He turned everything around. He was healed. He was restored. All that was taken. It makes me think of David whenever he was in a battle and he come back and all of their wives and children and everything had been taken from the enemy. And David inquired of the Lord, and he says, Lord, what am I supposed to do? He says, the men are so upset. They're ready to stone me. They're ready to kill me. What am I to do? And he says, go. And he says, and restore all. He's like, you go. He said, I'm going to give you the victory, and you go take every bit of it back. And not one life was lost. All that was taken was restored. And here in the life of Job, all that was taken was restored. And we may not see all of the stuff be restored here, but we're never going to give it another thought once we get to heaven. The Lord is good, and we can worship him. And the most precious time I think the Lord is most honored is when we worship him in the facing this hardship and difficulty and terrible, horrible circumstance. And before I close, I want to leave us with two more verses. James chapter 5, verse number 11. That was like, when I looked that one up, I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it says what it says. So I want to turn there. James chapter 5, verse number 11. Because it was just like a little reference, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this one. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is perfect. Lord, thank you for showing us this one. Behold, we count them happy which endure. I have put in the word endure. I was looking up scripture that had the word endure in it, and I was flipping through some of it, and I'm like, oh, let me see what's in the book of James. And then I clicked on James chapter 5, verse number 11. Look what it says. Behold, after I'd done studying the rest of this stuff out, behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job. I was like, oh my goodness, this is perfect, Lord. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And have seen the end of the Lord. Have seen how it ended. It ended with Job getting twice as much as that was taken. It was restored. He was restored. And have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. The Lord was so merciful. He did it out of his mercy and his grace and his pity on his people. And the anguish that they went through, and he's like, I'm going to make it, it's going to be better. They're going to get through this. When they endure, they're going to be happy that they endured. And he says, then I'm going to bless them. Then I'm going to bless them. And all that was taken from Job was restored. And then I'm going to leave us with one more, because when I was thinking of endurance, I was thinking we've got to endure. We've got to endure some things. And then I was thinking, well, we're supposed to endure like a soldier. And like, where is that? So I was looking up that one. And I found it in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse number 3. And I'm going to close with this one. 2 Timothy. Let me flip to it real quick. I didn't mark my page on that one. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse number 3. And it says, Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Endure as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. We are putting on our armor, going into battle, and God has provided us all the armor is Him. He is the armor. It's not me, it's Him. He's the armor. And we're to endure. We can endure as a soldier of Jesus Christ, not just a soldier of any old army. We're a soldier of the Lord, the army of God Himself. And Jesus Christ is our leader, and He's how we get through. And He deserves all our worship, praise, honor, respect, thankfulness, gratefulness that we can conjure up even in the midst of a difficult journey. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again soon.